Hello everyone. I'm excited to welcome you to today's presentation. Our topic is all about words that describe happiness. On this first slide, we'll explore some wonderful ways to express joy and positive feelings. We'll look at words like joy, happiness, delight, cheerfulness, and pleasure. I'll share what each of these words means and how they can be used in different contexts. So, let's get started and discover the many ways happiness can be described. Let's talk about excitement first. Excitement is that energetic happiness we feel when something great happens or we're looking forward to something exciting. For example, the crowd was full of excitement during the game, really alive with energy. Now, moving on to exhilaration. This is a step beyond regular excitement. It's that extreme feeling of happiness and thrill that takes over when you achieve something significant. Think about how he felt exhilaration after winning the race. It's almost like an unstoppable rush. Then there's ecstasy. This is even more intense. It's overwhelming happiness that can almost feel like you're floating. Fans jumping in ecstasy after their team's victory is a perfect example of that pure, joyful release. Next, we have euphoria. This is a state of intense happiness combined with confidence. When someone is in euphoria, they're on a high, feeling unbeatable and full of positive energy. Finally, we come to thrill. This is that sudden, sharp feeling of excitement, that rush of adrenaline when something unexpected or exhilarating happens. It's that powerful spark of strong happiness and excitement that can really make moments memorable. All these feelings are connected by their core of strong happiness and excitement, and understanding them helps us better grasp what drives human motivation and emotion in various situations. Sure. Here's the narration script for slide 3. Let's talk about some ways people experience happiness. For example, skydiving gave him a thrill, and that sensation of excitement is often followed by elation, which means great happiness and pride. Her success in her career filled her with elation, showing how achieving goals can boost our happiness. Now, when we describe happy people, there are several words to consider. First, delighted. This means you're very pleased and happy. Like when I hear good news, I often say, I am delighted to hear that. Then there's glad, which is a simple way to express happiness about something. For example, I'm glad you came shows appreciation and happiness. Next is pleased, which indicates you're satisfied and happy about a situation. If a teacher looks pleased, it suggests they are happy with their students' work or behavior. Moving on, cheerful describes someone who is noticeably happy and upbeat. Think of someone who's always smiling in the morning. That's a cheerful person. Finally, there's jubilant, which is a word for being extremely joyful, often after a big achievement or celebration. It captures a sense of overwhelming happiness that's hard to contain. All these words help us express different degrees and kinds of happiness, and understanding them enriches our ability to communicate emotions effectively. They tie back to our overall theme, how people experience and express happiness in various ways. After the match, the fans were jubilant, feeling a surge of joy and excitement. This happiness often extends beyond just the game. It creates a festive and lively atmosphere. When we talk about being merry, we're describing that cheerful, happy, and festive mood that everyone shares during celebrations. It's a time when everyone feels connected and uplifted. Similarly, the word blissful captures a sense of perfect happiness and peace. Imagine spending an evening with loved ones, feeling completely content and relaxed. That's what a blissful evening is all about. It's that deep, quiet happiness that makes you feel at peace. Now, when someone feels content, it means they're quietly satisfied and happy with what they have. For example, she might feel content with her simple life, appreciating the little things without craving more. Then there's overjoyed, which describes an extreme level of happiness. Think of parents hearing wonderful news. They might feel overjoyed, overwhelmed with positive feelings. It's a powerful emotional state that shows how deeply happy someone can be. Finally, being thrilled means feeling very excited and happy about something upcoming or new. Like when I say I'm thrilled about a trip, it's that bubbling anticipation and enthusiasm that makes everything feel even more special. All these words help us express different shades of happiness, which ties back to our overall theme of celebrating joyful moments and emotional experiences. Now let's look at some words that describe happiness in different ways. First up is radiant. When someone is radiant, it means they are showing happiness very clearly on their face. For example, she looked radiant on her wedding day. Her joy was unmistakable. Next, we have upbeat. Being upbeat means feeling positive and cheerful even when things aren't perfect. Like when he remained upbeat despite difficulties, he kept a good attitude and stayed optimistic. Then there, chuffed. This word is a bit more informal, and it means you're overjoyed with happiness. For instance, she was chuffed after hearing about her promotion. She was really thrilled and proud. We're also covering some casual words like happy, joyful, and excited. These are everyday words you might use to describe feeling good or enthusiastic about something. Understanding these words helps us express different shades of happiness, which is a key part of connecting with others and sharing positive emotions in our daily lives. Let's talk about some words that describe happiness and cheerful feelings. First, we have sunny, which is used to describe someone with a bright, cheerful personality. For example, you might say, "She has a sunny nature," meaning she's always positive and friendly. Next, we have lighthearted, which means feeling relaxed and carefree, often feeling on cloud nine, a phrase that means you're extremely happy. When you're lighthearted, everything feels easier and more fun. Moving on, in high spirits is another way to say someone is very cheerful. Imagine everyone at a party feeling excited and joyful. That's being in high spirits. Then there's rapture, which describes extreme happiness and excitement. Think of someone listening to music they love and feeling completely captivated, utterly lost in joy. Following that, we have jubilation, which is a feeling of great happiness combined with celebration. It's the kind of joy you see after a big victory, when everyone is cheering and celebrating together. Finally, felicity refers to intense happiness or bliss. It's a deep, heartfelt sense of joy that can fill someone completely. All these words help us express different shades of happiness, and understanding them enriches how we describe positive emotions, tying into our overall theme of emotional expression. They lived in domestic felicity, which essentially means they experienced a state of happiness and harmony at home. The word bliss is often used to describe a feeling of perfect joy and peace, like sitting peacefully near the sea, such a moment of pure bliss. Next, we have beatitude, which refers to a state of complete happiness. Think of it as a profound sense of contentment. For example, a monk's face might show beatitude, reflecting inner peace and spiritual joy. Then there's buoyancy, a word that captures a cheerful and confident attitude. When someone is buoyant, they inspire others with their optimism and positive outlook. Imagine a team led by someone whose buoyancy lifts everyone's spirits. It's contagious. Glee is slightly different. It describes sudden happiness and excitement. Think of children screaming with glee during a fun game or surprise. It's spontaneous and exuberant. Exultation is a feeling of triumphant happiness, like shouting in exultation after a hard-fought victory. It's a more intense, celebratory emotion. Finally, we come to enchantment, which is a delightful feeling mixed with admiration. It's that sense of wonder when you're captivated by something beautiful or extraordinary, feeling both joy and admiration at the same time. All these words point to different shades of happiness and joy, which are key themes when exploring human emotions and how they enrich our lives. As I look around, I see someone who looked around in enchantment, completely captivated by their surroundings. This feeling of contentment, which we can think of as peaceful satisfaction, often comes from appreciating the simple things in life. For example, simple living gave him contentment, reminding us that happiness doesn't have to be complicated. Now, moving on to vivacity. This is all about lively happiness and energy, that zest for life that makes everything feel brighter. Her vivacity attracted everyone in the room, showing how a vibrant personality can draw people in. Then there's ebullience, overflowing enthusiasm and joy that just spills out and fills the space around us. His ebullience filled the room, creating an atmosphere of positivity and excitement. Zest, which is great enthusiasm and enjoyment, is really about living life with passion. She lives life with zest, approaching each day with energy and a love for what she does. Merriment refers to joyful laughter and celebration, and in our example, the hall was full of merriment, highlighting how shared happiness brings people together. Finally, rhapsody is about extreme emotional happiness, an intense feeling of joy that perhaps leaves us feeling almost euphoric. This slide ties into the overall theme by illustrating how different expressions of happiness and positive emotions can enrich our lives and those around us. Today, I want to talk about some common idioms that express happiness and joy. You might have heard phrases like on cloud nine or over the moon, both of which mean someone is extremely happy. These expressions help us vividly describe those moments when we're feeling euphoric. Then there are other colorful idioms such as in seventh heaven or walking on air, which also capture that sense of bliss. You might also hear someone say they're full of the joys of spring or happy as a clam, both emphasizing a carefree, joyful state. Phrases like grinning from ear to ear and jump for joy are visual ways of showing happiness, smiling so big that it's contagious. When someone is tickled pink or in high spirits, it indicates they're in a particularly good mood. All these idioms serve the same purpose, expressing happiness in a lively and relatable way. And, as I mentioned earlier, the overall theme of this part of the presentation is about enriching our vocabulary with expressive language. Finally, I want to highlight that even in more formal settings, you might hear someone say they spoke in rhapsody about their success, meaning they spoke passionately and happily about it. These idioms and expressions help us share our feelings more vividly and connect emotionally with others. Now let's look at some phrasal verbs related to happiness that can really brighten up your language. First, we have cheer up. It's a friendly way to tell someone to become happier. For example, you might say, cheer up, everything will be fine, to encourage someone who's feeling down. Next is light up, which describes that moment when someone suddenly becomes happy, like when her face lit up when she saw her friend. You can almost see the joy in her expression. Then there's brighten up, meaning to become more cheerful overall, like when good news brightened up his day and made him feel better. Lastly, we have the phrase, have the time of one's life, which means to enjoy oneself immensely. Think about a vacation where someone might say, they had the time of their lives. These expressions help us describe happiness vividly and connect to the overall theme of expressing emotions in an engaging way. Now let's look at some common idiomatic expressions that use the word warm or similar ideas to describe emotional states. First, warm up to means to begin to like something or someone gradually. For example, she slowly warmed up to the new teacher, indicating that initially she might have been hesitant but eventually grew comfortable. Next, crack up refers to bursting into laughter suddenly and loudly. Imagine everyone cracking up at a joke. That's a moment of shared humor and joy. Moving on, liven up means to become more energetic and cheerful. Think about how music can liven up a party, making it more lively and fun for everyone. Then we have bubble over, which describes overflowing with excitement or joy. For instance, she bubbled over with happiness after hearing the good news. It's a vivid way to show someone's emotional state bursting out. Revel in is about taking great pleasure in something. He reveled in his success, meaning he thoroughly enjoyed and celebrated his achievement. Finally, glow with indicates showing happiness clearly, like a person who is glowing with happiness after a good day. All of these expressions help us vividly describe emotional states and enhance our storytelling, especially when we're sharing personal experiences or describing others' feelings. They connect to our overall theme by enriching our language and making our communication more expressive and relatable. Now, let's explore some beautiful ways to express joy and happiness in our language. When we say someone is bursting with joy, it really captures that moment when emotions overflow, like the parents here, who are so happy they can hardly contain it. It's a vivid way to show intense happiness. Next, we see filled with delight, which describes a person experiencing pure pleasure or satisfaction. Think of that feeling when something truly makes your day. It's a gentle but powerful way to communicate happiness. Then we have radiating happiness, which suggests that a person's joy is so strong, it seems to shine outward, like he's literally glowing with positive energy. It's a wonderful way to describe someone whose happiness is visible to everyone around them. Moving on to a heart full of joy, we see a more emotional, heartfelt expression. When she sings with a heart full of joy, it shows that her happiness comes from deep inside, resonating through her voice and spirit. The phrase overflowing with happiness indicates an even greater abundance, like the team's joy is so immense it spills over, affecting everyone around them. It captures collective happiness and shared excitement. Finally, sophisticated expressions like "she glowed with pride" take our language to a new level. Instead of just saying she was proud, we describe her as glowing, which adds a nuanced, elegant touch, showing pride in a way that's both subtle and powerful. All these expressions help us convey complex emotions vividly, making our communication richer and more engaging, an essential part of expressing joy in any context. Now, let's take a moment to explore some basic words that describe anger. These words help us express different levels and types of anger clearly and effectively. When you're feeling upset or annoyed, using the right word can really communicate your emotions well. For example, saying you're frustrated might describe a mild irritation, while outraged shows a much stronger feeling. Understanding these keywords is important because they form the foundation for expressing anger appropriately. Throughout our presentation, you'll see how recognizing these words helps us handle emotions better and communicate more effectively. Remember, choosing the right words is essential in managing and expressing anger in a healthy way. Now let's take a closer look at some words that describe strong and extreme anger. First up is furious. When someone is furious, they are extremely angry. For example, he was furious after hearing the lie. It's a very intense level of anger that's hard to ignore. Next, we have enraged, which means filled with intense anger. You might say, the unfair decision enraged the crowd, showing how a situation can really ignite strong feelings. Then there's infuriated, which means made extremely angry. For instance, she was infuriated by his behavior. These words help us express different levels of anger more precisely. Moving on, we also often use words like angry, annoyed, irritated, and upset. These are a bit less intense, but still communicate that someone is not happy or is bothered by something. Understanding these nuances is important because it helps us choose the right word to match the situation. Throughout this presentation, we've been exploring the spectrum of emotions, and recognizing these differences allows us to communicate more effectively, especially when emotions run high. When someone is livid, it means they are wildly angry. For example, my father was livid when he saw the damage, because he was extremely upset about what had happened. Outraged is a bit different. It's anger that comes from feeling that something is wrong or unfair. Think of citizens who are outraged by corruption. They feel that injustice deeply. Incensed takes that anger a step further. It's very intense. Like when someone insults you and you become incensed at the insult, feeling a strong sense of offense. Wrathful describes a state of deep, almost fierce anger. Picture a king giving a wrathful look, showing his anger without saying a word, just through his expression. Seething is more subtle. It's like quietly boiling with anger beneath the surface. Imagine someone sitting there, seething with rage, not shouting but internally furious. Fuming is when someone shows their anger openly and strongly. After an argument, he was fuming. His anger was evident, and he couldn't hide it. Overall, these words help us understand various ways people experience and express anger, from silent and simmering to openly intense. Recognizing these differences can improve our communication and empathy when dealing with emotional situations. Now, let's explore some ways to describe different levels and types of anger. When someone is boiling with anger, it means they are extremely angry inside, often feeling a strong, intense emotion that might not always be visible on the outside. For example, I might say, "She was boiling with anger," to show how deeply upset she was. Next, we have raging, which describes a person showing violent anger. Imagine someone coming home and being so furious that they are practically uncontrollable. That's rage. You might hear, "He came home raging with anger," indicating a very intense emotional state. Then there's explosive, which refers to anger that is likely to burst out suddenly, like an explosion. Picture someone with an explosive temper, meaning their anger can flare up quickly and intensely, often without much warning. Moving on, vengeful describes someone who is angry and seeking revenge. When the villain became vengeful, it meant they wanted to get back at those who wronged them, driven by their anger. Bitter is a deeper, long-lasting form of anger. It's not just about the moment, it's about feeling deeply hurt and resentful over time. For instance, "He sounded bitter about the betrayal," shows how that anger has persisted and become part of their attitude. Hostile anger is more aggressive and confrontational. When the crowd became hostile, there was a clear display of anger and opposition, often manifesting as aggression or resistance. Finally, agitated describes a state where someone is nervous and angry at the same time. It's that restless, uneasy feeling where emotions are running high, and a person might be fidgeting or speaking quickly. Understanding these different ways to express anger helps us recognize the various emotional states people go through, which is essential for managing conflicts and improving communication. On this slide, we see how the teacher felt exasperated with the class. Exasperation is a strong feeling of irritation and frustration, especially when things don't go as planned. In this case, the teacher was clearly upset because the students kept making the same mistakes or not paying attention. This repeated failure can really wear down someone's patience. We also look at some expressions and idioms related to anger. For example, fuming with anger describes someone who's extremely angry, like a fire simmering just beneath the surface. Imagine someone so upset that they're practically steaming. Another key word here is exasperated, which means very irritated and frustrated. You might notice that in the context, someone appears agitated, meaning they're visibly upset or distressed during a discussion. These expressions help us communicate different levels and kinds of anger, which can be useful when describing reactions in various situations. Connecting this to the overall theme, understanding how to express frustration or anger accurately can improve our communication, especially in professional or educational settings. It helps us convey not just the emotion, but also the intensity behind it. Now, let's explore some common expressions related to anger. When someone is raging with anger, it means they are extremely upset, to the point where they might storm out of a room or situation. This phrase highlights a very intense emotional state. Next, we have boiling over, which describes that moment when someone's anger finally becomes uncontrollable. Think of it like a pot of water boiling. Once it reaches a certain point, it overflows. It's a vivid way to show anger reaching a peak. Then there's seeing red, a phrase used when someone suddenly becomes extremely angry. Imagine the intense feeling of rage clouding your vision. That's where this expression comes from. It's often used when anger hits suddenly and strongly. Moving on, blow one's top is a colorful way to say someone loses their temper unexpectedly. Imagine a top popping off. They're losing control, often in a moment of frustration or anger. This phrase reminds us how quickly emotions can escalate. Finally, fly off the handle describes someone becoming angry very quickly, usually over a small issue. It's like losing composure suddenly, without much warning. Understanding these expressions helps us better recognize and describe different intensities and moments of anger, which ties back to our overall theme of emotional expression and management. When someone is extremely angry, we often say they have hit the roof. For example, "My boss hit the roof when sales dropped unexpectedly." It's a vivid way to describe losing your temper suddenly and intensely. Another way to describe intense anger is to say someone burns with rage. When you burn with rage, it's like the anger is burning inside you, impossible to ignore. Sometimes, anger is so fierce that people appear to be foaming at the mouth, like the coach after a tough loss, who was literally foaming at the mouth from frustration and fury. It's a very visual way to show just how extreme that anger can get. Now, anger doesn't always stay contained, it can escalate. That's where add fuel to the fire comes in. If someone makes rude or provocative comments, it only makes the anger worse, just like pouring gasoline on a flame. And finally, we have the phrase, like a bull in a china shop. This describes someone who enters a situation rough and careless, often angry or agitated, causing chaos without regard for the consequences. Imagine someone storming into a meeting, knocking things over, just like a bull in a fragile shop. These expressions help us vividly describe different levels and types of anger, which connects to our overall theme of understanding emotional responses and managing communication effectively. Now let's look at some common idioms related to anger. First, we have at boiling point, which describes a situation where the tension in the room is so high, it's almost about to explode. It's a vivid way to show just how intense emotions can get. Next, there's bite someone's head off, which means replying very sharply or angrily, like snapping at someone for something minor. I remember a time when I asked a simple question and got an unexpectedly harsh response, which was an example of this. Then we have lose one's temper, indicating a sudden burst of anger, often during a disagreement or stressful moment. It's that moment when control slips away. Lastly, in a temper describes someone who is already angry upon arriving or at a certain time. It's like they're starting the day with a chip on their shoulder. All these idioms help us understand how people express anger in different situations, and they connect to the overall theme of understanding emotional expressions in language. Recognizing these phrases can improve our communication, especially when dealing with tense moments. Now let's take a closer look at some of the more intense words for anger. First, we have rage, which is a violent, uncontrolled anger. You can imagine it as that raw, explosive energy when someone is completely overwhelmed by their emotions. For example, you might say, "He had rage filled his eyes," showing how intense and uncontrollable it can be. Next is fury, a step up in power. Fury is also a violent anger, but it often carries a sense of fierceness and strength. You might describe someone trembling with fury, emphasizing how deeply they feel that emotion. Then there's indignation, which is a bit different. It's anger caused by a sense of unfairness or injustice. It's that righteous anger that sparks when you see something wrong or unjust happening. For instance, he felt indignation at the injustice, highlighting that this anger is rooted in moral outrage. Resentment is another important term. It's a long-lasting form of anger, often built up over time. You might say, years of resentment remained in his heart, illustrating how this emotion can linger and fester over extended periods. Finally, we have some advanced and literary words for anger, which can add depth and nuance to your language when describing these feelings. Understanding these words helps us express the full spectrum of human emotion, which ties back to our overall theme of effectively communicating feelings and emotional states. Contempt is a form of angry disrespect that can really damage relationships. For example, when she looked at him with contempt, it showed a deep sense of disdain and disapproval. Moving on, malice is all about the desire to harm someone, whether physically or emotionally. You could tell his words were filled with malice because they carried a real intent to hurt. Ferocity, on the other hand, is about violent, aggressive anger. Like when he answered with ferocity, it was intense and unrestrained. Tempestuous describes a situation full of strong, angry emotions, and their relationship was truly tempestuous, full of ups and downs driven by intense feelings. Lastly, vehement expresses showing very forceful, intense anger. When someone is vehement, they're not holding back. Their anger is powerful and unmistakable. All of these words connect to the overall theme of emotional intensity and how different kinds of anger can manifest in various ways. Now let's look at how intense emotions can manifest through our language. When someone is extremely angry, we often describe them as being apoplectic with rage. This means they're so furious that it almost seems like they might burst. For example, you might notice their eyes blazing with anger, a vivid way to show just how heated they are. Sometimes, the anger is so overwhelming that a person actually trembles with rage, visibly shaken by their feelings. Their voice might also reveal their fury, shouting with a tone filled with anger and frustration. And in more intense moments, you might see someone burning with hatred, which highlights deep-seated resentment or hostility. The term apoplectic itself is quite powerful. It's often used to describe someone making a vehement protest, almost as if they're on the verge of losing control. All these expressions connect to our overall theme of emotional intensity and how language captures these powerful moments. Recognizing these cues can help us better understand the emotional state of others and respond appropriately. Now, let's look at some ways people express intense emotions through their actions and expressions. When someone stormed out in anger, it shows how anger can lead to sudden, dramatic actions, like leaving a room abruptly. This phrase captures that burst of emotion that makes someone act impulsively. Next, we see how anger can manifest physically, such as when someone's fists were clenched with rage. Clenching fists is a common sign of deep frustration or fury, highlighting how our bodies often reflect our inner feelings. Moving on, the phrase thunderous anger describes a tone of voice or mood that feels loud, powerful, and overwhelming, like a storm. When a teacher speaks with thunderous anger, it emphasizes the seriousness and intensity of their frustration, which can have a strong impact on the classroom atmosphere. Finally, when someone's face grew dark with anger, it's a vivid way to describe how emotions show on our faces. A darkened face signals that someone is very upset, and it's a visual cue that their anger is building up. Overall, these expressions connect to our theme of how emotions, especially anger, can be expressed in different ways, through actions, physical signs, tone of voice, and facial expressions. Recognizing these cues helps us understand and manage emotional responses better, whether in ourselves or others.